Hey there, everyone, and welcome to something completely different. For those who don't know, I'm Retro Stu, and typically I put like video game stuff on here, but I decided to jump into a little bit different of an idea of a video, something that I've been really kind of putting off for a long time because of how insurmountable the task seems like it would be. But I figured I'd go ahead and jump into it and try to get this going here at the beginning of the year. Hopefully you have this series that will run through as I finish up ranking all these things. So what I decided to do is a couple years ago, I jumped into this, what I call a cinematic journey, where I decided to really go back and watch movies that had either garnered a lot of attention or that people recommend highly, because as I grew up, as many of us do, I kind of found genres that I liked and stuck with those genres and didn't really branch out. But I decided to step over those hurdles and to actually engage in stuff that I probably wouldn't typically watch. So in this journey, I wanted to find lists of movies that people recommended that they enjoyed and that either won a bunch of awards or were just highly praised or garnered a lot of attention for one reason or another. So I decided to do that, but I wanted to figure out the best way to handle this, and obviously the best thing to do is to jump onto the internet and see what lists are out there. Ones that came up were obviously the IMDb 250 and, other sites that recommended different movies. I did stumble upon Letterboxd in this journey, and as a result decided to just find videos that, or movies that people highly recommended. And that's kind of where that journey is. So I started this back in 2023, I think is when I started this. So in the course of that time, I've watched too many movies in order to go through these. And mixing that with Letterboxd, so I would have something to track, which I'll link below if you want to check that out. And I decided that it's time to take all those movies that I've watched in the last 2-ish years and try to rank them based on 5 different categories. So let's jump over to the ranking, and we'll get started on that. Alright, so as you see, I have 5 different categories I'm going to place these into, and I don't know if that's going to be enough, but I didn't want to get too in-depth in terms of what I'm offering. But I'm basically breaking it down to all-time favorites, great watch, worth seeing once, meh, and probably never again. So we'll see how all of these rank. I want to try to go through these fairly quickly in terms of what I've watched, because there's a lot, as you can see as I scroll through here, a whole mess of movies. And there's actually been more since I first decided to do this, that I'll update later on in terms of the ranking. But for now, this is a good start because I think there's over 300 movies here at this point, leading up to towards the end of the year as I was continuing on this. But let's just jump into this, and these are arranged in the order that I watched them. So starting with the first that I started back in, I think, April-ish of 2023, up through October of this year. So it's every movie that I've watched, and it's probably way more than most people usually watch, so don't judge me. It just is what it is. With that, let's jump into this, and let's just give kind of a ranking as far as where I would place all of these. The first movie that I came up with, and if you're wondering how I came about which movie to watch and all that stuff, I utilized Wheel of Names and just created a random movie selector, and that's how I decided to do it for the most part. There did come a point where I started just watching them according to the list that I had, which I found on list challenges of the 300 movies people say you had to watch before you die. And in all honesty, the types of movies that I stuck with, I didn't do horror, so you won't find any horror movies, at least not any like gruesome and jump scare-ish type stuff. It's just not my genre. It's not something I'm interested in, so you're not going to find any of those on here. You may have some that has movies that are classified in that genre. I think Aliens and stuff like that, but straight up horror, you're not gonna find those things. But without further ado, I've rambled enough. Let's jump into this and let's see where I would rank these. So the first movie that I was presented with was Schindler's List. Kind of a heavy start, but definitely a movie that got a lot of awards and created in 1993. Steven Spielberg directed it. as I watched through this, it's a huge time commitment, 195 minutes, I think, but definitely a great watch. Tells the story of Oskar Schindler and his attempt to save the lives of thousands of Jewish people during the time of the Holocaust, and just well done, well acted. Just a movie that was definitely easily put into a great watch. I don't think I would put it as an all-time favorite just because of the length of it, but it's not to say I wouldn't go back and watch this again at some point. The next movie is Spinal Tap. This is a Rob Reiner movie directed in 1984. It's supposed to be like a mockumentary based on the lives of this band, British band Spinal Tap, who's trying to reignite their career. It's very dated, in my opinion. I know this has like a cult following, and a lot of people really like this movie. But I'm definitely going to be putting this in the meh category. For me, it just wasn't all that interesting to watch. I seem to recall myself getting bored as I watched this. And for me, when it comes to movies, if it feels like every minute that the movie is on, or when every minute the movie's on, you can feel it. It's one of those movies where it was just kind of meh. It dragged for me, and that's just personal preference on that. It's not to say I wouldn't give this another try to see if maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset to watch it, but for me, it just falls in the meh category. The next movie is my first foray into like subtitled, I think it was Japanese or Korean, I believe. And it is Ikiru. Now, if you talk to my wife, she will kind of jokingly say that I like movies where nothing happens. And this is one of those movies. This movie tells the story of Kanji Watanabe, and I'm probably saying that horribly, who is diagnosed with late-stage stomach cancer. And it's kind of his journey to finding fulfillment and meaning in life as he's wrestling with this. There's not a lot of action in it. It's all dialogue-driven. It's slow-moving at times, but I absolutely loved this movie. I thought the message that it gave was great, just about the importance of making something out of whatever you have in life. He was a bureaucrat, so he did a lot of paperwork and found that he didn't bring any joy or value to what he did in his life. But for me, that falls in... It's going to be the first, as far as movies go, that falls into all-time favorites. This movie comes highly praised, and for all the right reasons. So I definitely put it up there as an all-time favorite. Just a heartwarming tale where, yeah, you kind of get sucked into the story. The next is Disney's Aladdin. So this is the 1994, 1992 version. I grew up with this, so there's a lot of nostalgia to this movie. The songs are great, the story, I understand there's a lot of plot holes to it, and yada, yada, yada. And while I understand the value of nostalgia, for those that may not have ever seen this, I don't know why you haven't, but you definitely should. I don't know that I would put it necessarily at a great watch or even all-time favorites just because of the nostalgia factor there, but I would definitely say for people this is worth seeing once. Just a great movie, a fun movie, as only Disney could do back during the time of their Renaissance, so definitely worth giving a watch. The third movie was kind of a thriller, action spy thriller type movie, I think, and that's 1949's The Third Man. This was my first introduction to Orson Welles as an actor, and I'm glad I didn't form a full opinion on him based on this movie. Now, keeping in mind this was 2 years ago I watched this, so the details are foggy in terms of the movie, but I do remember that it seemed to think it dragged on a bit, and it could just be that it was an old black and white film. I don't know what it was about the story. I don't think I would ever put this in the probably never again category, but I would definitely put it in the meh category for me. Just not really all that engaging, not something that really was my cup of tea, and that's just kind of what it is. But for me, that's just where it falls. The next movie is one of the newer movies. I think this was released back when I started this journey in 2023, and this is the Super Mario Brothers movie. My wife and I went to see this. We double featured this with the next movie that'll be on my list. I've always been a big fan of Mario, Nintendo, that type of stuff, and so we got a chance to see this, and in the midst of a lot of like mediocre or less movies coming out during that time, we had a chance to go and see this, and for me, I love this movie. I thought it was great. I thought it was well done. I know a lot of people that, I don't know if it's fatigue or they just can't stand Chris Pratt for one reason or another, gave him a lot of hate for his voice acting, but then they don't come at the same energy with like Seth Rogen, who sounded like Seth Rogen, and Jack Black, who sounded like Jack Black. It's just a personal hatred that people have for Chris Pratt. Looking past all of that, I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was fun, and I don't know if I would put it a necessarily great watch. It was a good watch. It was fun and definitely worth seeing once. I'd definitely go back and watch it again. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of times. But for others, they may not see it as like something that they would watch over and over again. That they would see it as a watch once in a while, or just once and they're good. So I would put it there, worth seeing once. And the next movie is the second movie that we double featured on that day, and this was one that my wife actually wanted to see. We've kind of been getting into D&D lately. We're actually getting ready as of January 3rd. We've got a session 0 coming up to create characters and to start a D&D campaign for the first time. So we'll see how that all plays out. But back when this came out, knowing very little about Dungeons & Dragons, aside from we watched Dimension 20 on Dropout, which we enjoy watching. This was definitely one that's worth seeing once. I like the comedy, I like the story. I thought is it a masterpiece in film? No, but it was a lot of fun for us. We enjoyed it. So it was definitely one that's worth seeing at least one time. The next movie, and you're going to see a theme with movies like this is Trainspotting. Now, I know this gets like praised a lot for its depiction of drug culture and the story that it's in. It just wasn't for me. So this is going to definitely fall in the first probably never again category. And you may come at me and say, well, I just don't understand it, I should give it another try. But when it comes to these kinds of movies, it's just not my thing. So you'll see that happen a few times. It has nothing to do with the acting or the story. It's just a matter of personal preference with this. This was not that interesting to me. It was deeply disturbing, which I guess was the point, but not something that I would go back and watch again. Just not interested. The next movie is Ran. Now, this one I have to get my notes for. So this was a Japanese take on Shakespeare's King Lear, apparently. This is a feudal lord who is basically stepping down and turning his kingdom over to his kids, who are basically greedy and end up betraying one another and going to war against one another. And I wrestled with where to put Ran, because it wasn't necessarily bad. I think it was just, for me, diving into these foreign films that I'm not really used to, a lot of subtitles, reading through the whole movie, it does kind of take me out a little bit of that. So this may end up warranting a rewatch at some point in the future, now that I've got the gist of what's going on. But I'm gonna put Ran, well, it may not have been my cup of tea. I would put this in the worth seeing once. I think it's, if you're looking to expand your horizons on movies and you want to get into the foreign genre, Ran is definitely not a bad place to go. I'm grateful that I watched it. I think the story itself was decent, so it's definitely worth seeing once. It's definitely not as bad as Meh, because it did keep you engaged. So worth seeing once, and that's where I would end up placing that. The next movie, it's easily going to go in an all-time favorite. I watched this movie the first time when I was in, I think, high school. They showed this movie, and I regret not watching it more over the course of my life, but that's Dead Poets Society. So this is an all-time favorite. Robin Williams, just a great story, great movie, well told, well presented. Definitely going to fall into the all-time favorite category. Just, I love this movie. So I can't really say enough good things about it. If you don't know the premise, it's the story of this like private school where Robin Williams comes in as a teacher and really inspires kids through the teaching of poetry to engage in their passions and to engage in their interests. Deals with some dark themes and just the unhealthy expectations that parents can put on kids, but it's definitely just a great story and a great telling of that story. Which brings us to our next movie, which is Ford versus Ferrari, or Ford v Ferrari. When I heard that this movie was coming out, I'm like, this is the most ridiculous product placement movie I've ever heard of. At least that's what I thought it was going to be, and it probably was that for the most part. But it really tells the story of how Ford is developing a race car in order to compete with Ferrari at the 1966 24 Hours of Le Mans, in order to beat that car by building a superior car. I found myself enjoying this more than I thought I would. I don't know that I would put it into a great watch, but it was definitely worth seeing once. The story was good. It was engaging. It's who was in this? Matt Damon and Christian Bale are in the key roles there, and just a great story of the competitive competition between the two companies. So definitely worth seeing once. And as I'm thinking of this worth seeing once is probably going to get filled very, very quickly, and that's all right though. If I have to clear out in order to make room, we'll do that. The next movie, I avoided this movie like the plague. I don't know why. It came out during a time when I was obviously much younger, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, who at the time I didn't care for as an actor, and that is Titanic. So I avoided watching this movie, and then when I actually watched it, now being older and more mature and wiser and whatever, it actually wasn't bad. It takes a disaster, the sinking of the Titanic, adds a love story to it, because that's what Hollywood does, and yeah, it was better than I thought it would be. I can't say that I would put it in a great watch, because for me it just wasn't. It wasn't a great watch, and I doubt it's something that I'm going to go back to on my own free time and watch. I would put it worth seeing once. I would definitely do that. James Cameron gets a lot of praise. It's won a lot of awards. At one point, it was the highest grossing film for years. So definitely worth seeing at least one time. The next movie, this one blew my mind. Because when I first started watching it, I was like, did I get the wrong movie? Because it just didn't make sense with what I was seeing. And that is Dogville. Now, the premise of this movie is just crazy. Nicole Kidman playing Grace was hiding from a group of mobsters and finds her way into the small mountain town of Dogville, Colorado, where she's provided a safe hiding place in exchange for labor. There is no scenery aside from this stage that they're on with chalk drawings of buildings, and that's the whole town. And when I first started watching, I was like, what on earth is this, and how on earth am I going to be able to pay attention and keep track of this story? It looks ridiculous. But as the story went on, and as you just saw the interaction, it speaks highly to human depravity and how people, given the right opportunities, will take advantage of individuals that they view as weaker. And for me, it falls in the all-time favorites. Now, I understand that there's a sequel to this that I haven't watched, but this is one that I would definitely go back to and watch. Just a great story, great telling. It is very artsy, and just it requires your imagination to fill the gaps with the lack of scenery, but just such a good movie, such a good idea. It was different. It's something I'd never seen before, and I think that is what kind of elevated it to this point for me. The next movie is Rashomon. Once again, this is another Akira Kurosawa, which was Ikiru did that. He did this, and I think Ran. He was also part of that. Yeah, Akira Kurosawa also did Ran. This was the story of a samurai who was murdered, and the telling of what happened based on different viewpoints. I think a bandit and the woman he was in love with, and I think a ghost eventually, or the ghost of a samurai or something. This is going meh for me. I get what it was trying to do. I get that what take they were trying to have for this, but it just wasn't all that engaging for me. I would definitely keep it here in the meh category. It was fine, but not something that I'm going to go back and watch. In that case, I might want to drop that a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to drop that. I'm going to put that into probably never again. I saw it once. That was enough. That was more than enough. I don't think it's something that I'm going to return to. That's not a guarantee, but it is what it is at this point. Moving on to the next one, Blade Runner. Now, Blade Runner has a bit of a cult following. I couldn't exactly tell you, what are they, Reploids or something. It's a take on the Philip K. Dick's 1968 novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Yeah, replicants, that's what they're trying to hunt down that escaped to Earth. This movie has a great impact on culture. You see references to it in a lot of TV shows and movies and things like that. Kind of meh for me. Now, I'll admit that I'll probably have to go back and watch this one again. Maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset, or I was distracted or whatever. But for me, I just didn't get the appeal of it. I didn't understand why it gets so much love in certain circles, but I'm sure all these movies get that love, depending on where you're looking and that type of thing. But for me, it's just meh, just not all that engaging. Next is Amadeus. Now, Amadeus is the telling, creative telling, I'm going to put it that way, of Mozart and his life. as he rose up and gained a lot of popularity, and even into his early death, especially in competition with Antonio Salieri, I think is how it's pronounced. This for me was a great watch. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a great telling, and I understand there was a lot of like creative licensing that was taken with this story, that they took on a lot of creative takes for this film. But I thought it was well told. I thought it was well acted. It was a great watch for me. I would definitely go back and watch this again at some point. Not an all-time favorite, but I thought the story was good, and I thought it did encourage me to like look a little bit more into Mozart, and basically how tragic it was that a musical genius was buried in like a pauper's grave, so that he was just kind of dumped in a grave with other people. So just kind of interesting to see that no matter how much notoriety or prestige you get, you could end up just being dumped with, regular people who didn't have any notoriety. So just a sad ending to his life in terms of that, but definitely a good story, definitely a good movie, well acted, well performed. A little ridiculous at times, but I think that's what they were going for, but definitely a great watch for me. The next movie is another one that I was kind of avoiding like the plague. I think it's just something about James Cameron's movies that I just keep at arm's length. Because honestly, when it came out, it looked stupid. I don't understand the point of it. I still don't know that I understand the point of it. But it's Avatar. Now, when I was spinning this wheel, a lot of times what I would do, not always, but if I came up with a sequel on that list, then I would go back and watch the original so that I knew what the heck was going on. And I'm glad I did this, because that's what happened in this situation, where you had The Way of Water, I think is what the sequel is called, that came up before Avatar. So I had to go back and watch Avatar first, just so I wasn't completely clueless on, and I'm glad I did, because I think I would have been lost and confused if I hadn't done that. But I will say that Avatar was better than I thought it would be. I still don't understand the full appeal of it for a lot of people, but it's definitely worth seeing once. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, and maybe because my expectation and my bar was set pretty low on this one, that helped it out a great bit. Definitely worth a watch at least once. Which brings us to Avatar: Way of Water, or The Way of Water, or I might have that wrong in terms of the title. Something with water. I actually like this one better than the first one. I don't know if that's a popular opinion, but to me it just had a bit of a better story. There were more like heart-wrenching moments in this one. The story was a little more engaging as far as what was being told. I still don't understand why Avatar is slated to have like 3 other sequels, but we gotta beat that dead horse as long as it keeps money, right? And that's kind of what Disney does anymore, is they take an IP and just beat it to death as long as people keep showing up for it. But that being said, I would definitely still play this and worth seeing once. Next is a Christmas classic. Why it's a Christmas classic? I mean, it has its Christmas scenes and whatnot, but it's A Wonderful Life. Now, I avoided this movie because my wife constantly talked about how much she hated this movie, and that's her personal preference on that. Is it a masterpiece? No. But is the story it tells good? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great story. I don't know if I would put it in a great watch, though. I think it tells I'm sorry if I don't know the main characters' names and all that stuff. I kind of zone out when it comes to that type of stuff, so I'm terrible with that. But the main character, who is really having a rough time with life, kind of gets to a point where he would like to see what life looks like if he'd never been born, and it goes through what the world would look like, and to show the impact that he has. Just kind of you don't realize the impact that you have on people's lives if you're not there. Just a good telling, and it's definitely worth seeing at least once. I think I watched this in like May or June. I watched this in April, so Christmas in April. But definitely worth seeing once if you haven't seen it. It's going to be tough for people that have a hard time with black and white movies, just because the whole movie's in black and white. I get where the love comes from for it. I don't think for me it falls in the ranks of top Christmas movies, and maybe one day I'll do a video on that if this goes well. It's worth seeing once. It's worth checking out. So that's It's a Wonderful Life. A good movie. I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't as bad as my wife gave it or thought it was. We're all entitled to our opinions with that. So moving on to the next movie, which is easily going into an all-time favorite. I've watched this movie multiple times. I enjoy it every time. It's J.K. Simmons, and I always forget the other actor's name, but Whiplash. This tells the story of a kid who's really into jazz drumming specifically, and tries to get into this prestigious jazz group in a college. Just a fantastic movie. The suspense that's in this, the drama, the acting by J.K. Simmons. I hope I got the right name. I don't want to confuse him with J.K. Rowling. That's an author. J.K. Simmons is the actor. But just a great story, the way it's told, the way it's presented, keeps you on the edge of your seats. It's really kind of a roller coaster ride in terms of, do you like the instructor? Do you not like the instructor? It really pulls at you from both sides. Definitely an all-time favorite, up there with Dogville, Dead Poet Society, and Hero, and definitely one that I would watch again. The next movie, another foreign film, this is Children of Heaven. This tells the story of a family in poverty where a boy loses his sister's pair of shoes, and he goes on a series of adventures in order to find them. And when he can't find them, he tries to find a way to win a pair. It's heart-touching. It's well told. I kind of struggle. I don't really want to put it down in meh, because it is slow-moving. But the story's good. Like, I think I'm going to put it in worth seeing once. I think it's worth taking your time to check this out. So it's definitely worth checking out at least once. The next movie is a movie which focuses on Hollywood's odd obsession with adult men going aggressively after teenage girls. And that happens a lot in Hollywood films, but whatever. And this is American Beauty, and it really basically tells a story of a middle-aged man, Kevin Spacey's in it, go figure, who is really like disillusioned by his life and has these fantasies of his daughter's friend or a girl in his daughter's school or something, and it's just, this is probably never again for me. It's disturbing how often Hollywood does this, and you'll see that in a number of movies as we go through this list. I understand it gets a lot of acclaim, and people talk about it a lot in certain circles, but for me, it's a probably never again. And kind of a side note, just to understand, this probably doesn't necessarily reflect my ratings on Letterboxd. I don't even remember what I gave this. I may have rated it higher than what I'm putting it at here, but for me, it's disturbing. The story's well told, I guess, but just the content matter is problematic, especially in today's society. The next one is Cinema Paradiso. This tells the story of a young man who is just enraptured with movies. He hangs out at and I think is it Spain or Mexico or something, I forget exactly, but he basically befriends this projectionist at a movie theater, and through his love of movies, just kind of follows him through finding a love that he lost, I believe. It's been a long time. I'm trying to remember the exact plot points. But I do remember that I enjoyed watching this. I'm going to put this at a great watch. I thought it was a really well-told story. For whatever reason, the story connected with me. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. And I would probably give it a watch again. The next movie is The Untouchables. And this was a interesting movie to me, just in the sense that it follows the life of this lower class, I don't know if he's middle class or whatever, guy who stumbles into this job as a caretaker for this really wealthy individual. And it's just the story of their relationship and how they come to trust one another and to help this guy who is a paraplegic or quadriplegic, I forget exactly. I love this movie. I thought it was really well done. I thought the story was just touching and heartwarming. I'm putting it at a great watch. I don't know if I would put it in all-time favorites, but it's definitely one that, I think it's French, so just to be aware of that. The next movie is $1 Million Baby. Clint Eastwood, Hilary Swank. Hilary Swank is this boxing hopeful who looks to be trained and taught at a gym that Clint Eastwood's character runs. I think Morgan Freeman is also in this. But as the story goes on, she ends up getting severely injured to the point where she's paralyzed. She wrestles with, making difficult decisions and the price of putting everything into your passion and interest, but it's definitely a very, very heart-wrenching and difficult movie at the end. I have to put it at a great watch. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was well done. Clint Eastwood movies are kind of give or take on some of this stuff. All right, the next movie, and this is going to be interesting because I had never watched Quentin Tarantino movies before I embarked on this journey. And when I started watching Kill Bill, which is the next movie, don't know that I had the appreciation for it that I do now. And it's a weird thing. It took me like 5 or 6 Tarantino movies before I was like, wait a minute, I think I have an appreciation for what he's done. Kill Bill, like a lot of Tarantino movies, is comically gory. Just excessive blood, the most ridiculous stuff, most ridiculous scenarios. While I don't know that I really loved this to begin with, I'm definitely putting this in a worth seeing once. I still don't think I could put it in that great watch. A lot of people might. They may find that that's enjoyable for them to watch over and over and over again. And I may at some point go back. I've got a lot of other movies to watch. But go back and check out these movies. But Kill Bill is worth seeing at least one time. I enjoyed it now that I think back on it more fondly than I thought I would, which is an odd thing. But we'll talk when we get to it what movie kind of solidified that, okay, maybe I do like Tarantino films. So with that, Kill Bill falls in worth seeing once. So it's a story of Uma Thurman's character who is almost murdered at her wedding and ends up going to seek revenge on the one who tried to kill her, which was her husband, I think, or at least the father of her child. Yeah, so just kind of that story. But that being said, worth seeing once, definitely worth checking out. The next movie is All the President's Men. So this is Dustin Hoffman, and I forget the other guy's name, but it tells the story of this Watergate, I think, and the 2 New York Times reporters. Yeah, so this is the story of Washington Post reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, who uncovered the details of Watergate scandal that led to Nixon's resignation. So this was a well-told story in terms of the subject matter, and I would definitely place this, once again, this is going to go in the worth seeing once category. Dustin Hoffman, Robert Redford, great acting, well done storytelling, so that's definitely worth seeing once. So the next one is Catch Me If You Can. This is Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. Tells the story of Leonardo's character. Once again, I don't know the names of the characters and all of that stuff, who is like this professional grifter and con artist slash forgery. There it is, that's the word. He's really good at forgery and gets away with like a lot of money and a lot of things as a result of his ability to do so. It's a well-told story. Definitely enjoyed this more than I thought I would. So worth seeing once. I would put it definitely in that category. Not necessarily a great watch, but definitely worth seeing at least one time. All right, the next movie is easily, this is Russell Crowe. This is A Beautiful Mind. Tells the story of a professor who gets into a mindset of believing that he's working for a military intelligence agency, just to find out over time that he has schizophrenia and everything he's seeing it's false, is made up in his mind. This is an all-time favorite for me. I love this movie. I thought it was well done. I will say that as I've reflected back on Russell Crowe's roles, though, he is kind of always the same character in every single one of his movies. That being said, I love this movie. I think it's an all-time favorite for me. It's where I would put it. It's always going to fall within my top 10 to 20 movies. So that's kind of where I place that. The next movie is The Lives of Others. When I first sat down to try to do this video, I tried to think back to exactly what this movie was about. And that doesn't speak too highly of the movie itself. In 1984, East Berlin, an agent of the secret police conducting surveillance on a writer and his lover finds himself becoming increasingly absorbed by their lives. I remember I enjoyed this when I watched it. That's all I can kind of remember, but the exact story and plot line, I forget. And once again, it's been 2 years, and when you watch the number of movies that I've watched, keeping them all straight and knowing every detail is difficult. I don't even know if I'm doing a great job giving little details, but I do remember enjoying this movie and would definitely put it in the worth seeing once. Because I don't remember a whole lot about it, I can't push it into that great watch category. But I do remember enjoying this. I think this was a German film, considering the original title was Das Leben der Anderen. I'm guessing German. That being said, worth a watch. Definitely enjoyed it. Remember enjoying it when I watched it, even though I can't recall all the details of the film. The next one is another German film. This was made in like and that's Das Boot. Oh, it's 1981, so it's not that old, but so this is the talk of a German U-boat that's in the waters of the North Atlantic as it experiences the sheer terror and claustrophobic life of a submariner in World War II. This was a long movie, if I remember right. Yeah, 2.5 hours. Well, not as long as some of the movies that I watched, but 2.5 hours is still quite a time commitment. It wasn't the 3 hours that Schindler's List was, but still. I think it being German and just the subtitles mixed with, at times, very slow moving. I think I'm going to put this in meh. But it's going to be right on that line between meh and worth seeing once. There were a lot of good things about this movie, but it kind of like made heroes of the World War II German army, which was interesting to see how it's done. So this was made in 81, and war movies are always tough for me anyway. I don't know that there's ever going to be one that I'm going to love seeing. There are certainly some that are better than others. This I'm going to put in meh, with the potential to go up to worth seeing once, but I leave that up to you guys to decide on that. The next movie, I'm going to put this is Dial M for Murder. It tells the story of like a murder mystery type situation. So this is one of those, like, this is a Hitchcock film, I believe, yeah. Former tennis star arranges the murder of his adulterous wife. I have a love-hate, well, maybe not even a love-hate. Any Hitchcock stuff that I've watched, I've not been a fan of. Now granted, I'm kind of staying away from the more horror-centered stuff, so I didn't watch Psycho and Birds and all that stuff. Dial M for Murder is going to go into Probably Never Again. Not that it was a bad movie, but it's not one that I'm going to put on just for entertainment purposes. You know, if I ran into someone that absolutely needed to see it and I would watch it with them, but I'm certainly not going to put this on my own. For me, it's just Hitchcock, and that's probably we're going to see a lot of Hitchcock things to fall into this kind of category where I don't know that I'll watch them again, but who knows what the future will hold. The next movie, this one once again has a cult classic, or has a cult following. This is Fargo. I'm conflicted on Fargo. Yeah, so this is the Minnesota car salesman Jerry Lundgaard's inept crime falls apart due to his and his henchmen's bungling and the persistent police work of the quite pregnant Marge Gunnarsson. Now these are IMDb things, which are never great, but that kind of sums it up. It's kind of a goofy crime movie, or bumbling criminal movie, I guess you would call it. For me, I'm going to put it in meh. I didn't love this movie. I could kind of get the appeal for it. There's some absurdity to it. This is the one with the famous wood chipper scene that people talk about, but it falls in meh. I would definitely put it around the same category as Spinal Tap in the sense that it just wasn't for me, and that's where it is. The next movie is I believe, Spanish movie, and it centers around the world of dog fighting, I believe is what the overall premise is. And that's Amores Perros, and I'm going to put that in the Probably Never Again. To be honest, at this point, having been so far removed from it, I don't know the exact plot points of this movie, but I do remember that it wasn't necessarily a great watch for me. It was fine, but it's not something I'm going to put on again. This next movie is, I have to look at the actual title because this picture's too small. The Night of the Hunter? Yeah, The Night of the Hunter, I remembered it. This movie stands out to me for all the wrong reasons. It was just weird. There's this, like, killer that enters into this town and ends up seducing this woman and marrying her, and then, like, basically trying to kill her kids after he murders her. Just such a weird movie, and I think a lot of people like this, and it gets praised pretty heavily. It's a meh for me. Can't say that it's a never again. I may check it out eventually, just to give it another shot. But for me, it was just so odd. Definitely high on the creep factor, which is probably what it was going for. The kids end up with this lady who basically protects them from him, and just kind of a weird story. All right, the next one is a very, very popular, very well-known franchise, and that's Rocky. This is a great watch for me. I always enjoy Rocky. It's not an all-time favorite for me. I enjoy the movies when I watch them, so it's definitely something that I would go back and watch again. So this tells the story of Rocky, who ends up getting into boxing. This is against Apollo Creed, and trains really hard to fight him. I think it's a great story that shows the reality that not every hero in a story has to win. Great movie. I think as of right now, it's the only Rocky movie that'll be in this ranking. I do have plans to watch the others again, and I should have said this an hour ago when I first started, but I will try to make sure it's known when I've seen a movie and it's a rewatch. I haven't really been doing that, and when it's new. Most of these have been new. Beautiful Mind, Whiplash, Aladdin were rewatches. I think that's it. The rest of them were brand new to me, so that's just kind of where we're at. Rocky was a rewatch. The next movie I actually found, this is the one rare one where I didn't go back and watch the original before watching this one, and that's Top Gun Maverick. I was never interested in seeing the Top Gun franchise, but I actually enjoyed this. Maverick was actually a great watch for me. I thought the story was good, it was an enjoyable movie, the acting was great. I'm not a huge fan of Tom Cruise typically, maybe as a person more than an actor, but that's just kind of where it is. But without knowing much about the Top Gun franchise, I enjoyed this movie. As a standalone movie, it was good. And I know there's probably other stuff that it referenced that I missed out on because I never watched the original, but I believe the original is on my list to watch. I just have to get around to doing that. The next movie, once again, I put off because in my mind as a younger man, I viewed this as like horror or just not something I'd be interested in seeing. But that's No Country for Old Men. This falls easily in a great watch. This was a great story. The acting was wonderful in it. I thought it was really well done. Basically follows the serial killer around the country. I think the police's attempt to catch him, I believe is what it was. Probably way off on the plot, but I remember enjoying this movie. I thought it was a great watch, so that's where I'm going to place it. This next movie was a French film, and it easily falls into Probably Never Again, The 400 Blows. Now, I understand that this is a series of movies. It just tells the story of this like troubled kid who ends up getting arrested or put into a boys' home, I forget, for stealing a printer or something like that. It was boring to me. It was dull. I just didn't care for it. So for me, it falls in the Probably Never Again. And I am trying to go through these pretty quickly just because there's so many. The next one is another weird one. Once again, I know that there are references to this movie in culture, especially, I'm ready for my close-up Mr. DeVille or whatever it is that she says in it. But this is Sunset Boulevard, and I'm going to put this at meh. Just a weird story. Just stalkerish and just kind of this weird infatuation type situation that goes on where a guy ends up basically leaving his love interest for this Hollywood starlet, washed up Hollywood starlet or whatever. That's kind of delusional. So just kind of a meh story for me, and that's where I'll place that one. Next is another war movie. This is Saving Private Ryan. I don't know that you're going to see many war movies that are going to fall above this. It's worth seeing once, but it's a war movie to me, and I'm just not the hugest fan of them. This is Tom Hanks as he's involved in, I forget which war, but he's in search of the last remaining son of a family, which was, I think it's Matt Damon's character. Ryan is who he's looking for, and it's the tale of them traveling. I guess it would be World War II, because I think the movie starts on D-Day. The tale of him trying to get to find this private so he can get him back home so that the family doesn't lose all of their sons. It's worth seeing once, in my opinion, but I don't know if it's something that I would ever go back and watch again. So I guess technically I should put it in Probably Never Again, but you know what? I can't put it that low, is the thing. It was better than that. I can't say I'd never watch this again. I probably would. So, it's worth seeing at least one time. The next movie is The Bridge Over the River Kwai. This stars Obi-Wan Kenobi as like a general or some kind of military leader. He and his troop or whatever get captured and are forced to build this bridge, and they want them to build it like, the people that capture them wanted this like crappy bridge, but they want to like go all out, and he does it basically just so he can get a name for himself. And it's an effort to kind of wake him back up, and that just all goes horribly awry. I don't know if I can put this in the worth seeing once category. I think I'm going to put it in worth seeing once. I think it's definitely worth giving a watch. It's well acted, and when you're so familiar with one work from a guy, so Obi-Wan Kenobi, I forget the actor's name, it's good to see them in other things that they've done. So it's definitely worth giving a watch at least once. It wasn't that bad of a movie if I remember right. I do think it dragged on a little bit, but aside from that, it was a decent story, a decent telling of that story. So yeah, I would say it's worth watching at least one time. The next movie, I remember nothing about this next movie, and that will tell you all you need to know about it. Double Indemnity. Probably Never Again. I don't even know, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the plot of it is, so let me look it up on my handy dandy Google box. An insurance representative is seduced by a dissatisfied housewife into a scheme of insurance fraud and murder that arouses the suspicion of his colleague, a claims investigator. Oh, okay, I do remember this one. Okay, I remember it now. Yeah. I think Probably Never Again is a safe bet with this. This is Billy Wilder. No, sorry. Fred MacMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, and Edward G. Robinson. I do remember bits and pieces about this movie. But yeah, probably never again is where that falls. This film noir style is kind of tough for me. I don't know that it really ages well as far as cinema goes. It's my opinion on it. Because I'm trying to think in the film noir category if there was anything that really stood out, but nothing. The Usual Suspects, this easily falls in meh. It was predictable to me. So the premise is that a sole survivor of a peer shootout tells the story of how a notorious criminal influenced the events that began with 5 criminals meeting a seemingly random police lineup. Just absolutely predictable. Kevin Spacey's in this one as well. It's just meh, not one that I would rave about. It wasn't necessarily bad, but just kind of expected is what I would classify it as. The next one, this is going into a great watch. This is There Will Be Blood. Daniel Day-Lewis is in this. Just such a weird movie, a captivating movie. I'm not sure what the words are to describe, but he's basically like this oil baron. I guess that's what you would call it. Makes a bunch of money off of oil, ends up in this small western town, kind of takes over. The polling lane scene at the end, my wife had walked in while I was finishing watching this, and that's all she knows about this movie is the bowling alley scene. Well acted, great story, interesting premise. So definitely great watch. I'd go back to this one easily. Next movie is The Iron Giant. Who was this movie made for? That's a meh. This was a movie that as I watched it seemed too adult for kids and too kids for adult. It tells the story of this kid who finds this giant alien weapon, basically, and how they try to save it and keep it from being destroyed by the military and all that. I didn't understand. It was a meh for me. I didn't understand who the movie was made for. I didn't get the point of it. It kind of dragged on, in my opinion. It probably could have been like a 30-minute cartoon. That being said, I don't rank it very high just because it wasn't something that I really was all that interested in. So we're going to do 4 more movies, and then we'll cut it off at 50 here. The next movie is easily a great watch. I wrestle sometimes with these earlier Pixar stuff. Not early Pixar, but earlier than now Pixar. But Coco. Coco is just a great movie. The animation is great, the colors, the approach to Dia de los Muertos and family and that focus there, and not being forgotten. It's just a great story. I think it's a great watch. I enjoy it every time I watch it. This is back when Pixar was putting out quality product as opposed to now where, because Disney's got a hold of it, they're just, once again, let's have Toy Story 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, because let's just beat as much money as we can get out of that dead horse. Coco was good. It was creative. It was imaginative. I enjoyed that movie. Great watch. The next one, this is once again in that category like Trainspotting, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I think this stars some of the same people as Trainspotting, but for me, it's a probably never again. There's just I don't know if it's a grittiness to these movies or what it is that I just don't love. And so for me, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and there's another one coming up here in a few that probably the next video that'll end up down there as well. But I just didn't love it. So that's just me. I don't even remember the exact plot of this movie. I just remember I didn't enjoy it when I watched it. So that's going to be probably never again for me. Next is Once Upon a Time in America. This was former prohibition-era Jewish gangster returns to the Lower East Side of Manhattan 35 years later, where he must once again confront the ghosts and regrets of his old life. I'm not going to put it down at probably never again, but it's definitely going in a meh. I did not love this movie. It was too long. I remember that much because it's got a running time of almost 4 hours. I just did not love this. It felt like 4 hours, which is never good for a movie. And I'm finding that at least in a lot of these early gangster movies, which is what De Niro did a lot, I did not love him in these movies. And I know that a lot of people do. That's kind of where he got his career. But the excessive violence and I get it, they're gangster movies. Like, that's just what they are. The disturbing scenes that are throughout them, it wasn't my cup of tea. So for me, it just falls in meh. I don't know if it's something that I would ever give another shot. Maybe, but at a 4-hour runtime, that's a huge time commitment. I'd have to break it up into pieces and watch it again, which I don't really want to do that. I don't know that this is even worth seeing one time, in my opinion, but I'm sure there's a lot of, what does it get rated on IMDb? Yeah, 8.3 out of 10. So a lot of people like this movie. I just did not. That takes us to the last movie that we're going to do for this video, and this is A Separation. This was an Iranian film? I forget exactly what, but it basically tells the story of this couple that is separating, that is divorcing. It's a married couple that are faced with a difficult decision to improve the life of their child by moving to another country, or to stay in Iran and look after a deteriorating parent who has Alzheimer's disease. And I can't remember if I think the husband wanted to stay in Iran to care for the ailing parent, and the wife wanted to leave and get a better life for their kids. It was a good story. I think it's definitely gonna fall easily in worth seeing once. Kind of the difficulty of human decision in that when you're faced with the care of a loved one who can't very well travel to another country versus trying to provide a better, safer life for you and your family. So I would put that at worth seeing once. I don't think I'd put it at great watch, but it's definitely worth seeing if you've got the time. Once again, it is an Iranian film, so there's subtitles, all that stuff, but if you're not bothered by that, definitely worth taking the time to watch that. So with that, I think we're gonna call it quits in this video. We're over an hour. I don't know what it's gonna look like when I edit it down, but right now this is where the rankings stand. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, how much you agree with, how much you don't agree with. I'm sure there's a lot you don't agree with, and you know, as I've got a whole bunch of other movies that I'm looking to watch over the course of the year, let me know what your favorite movies are. You know, what are the ones that you find yourself going back to? What are your all-time favorites? But until next time, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, all that fun and exciting stuff so you know when the next video drops, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!